It was a chillish summer night in Spotsylvania County, 1996, when 8-year-old Sofia Maitland vanished beneath a twilight sky, brushed in cotton candy pink, the scent of honeysuckle thick in the air, and not a single cloud to hint at disaster. One moment, she was on the swing in her backyard, tracing arcs through the dusk, giggling as her father grilled burgers on the porch. The next, she was gone, swallowed whole by the stillness. No sound, no struggle, no goodbye, just silence. The kind that sinks its teeth into memory. For nearly 3 decades, that silence festered like an open wound, carving through her family's soul, haunting a town that never truly exhaled. And now, as the summer of 2025 scorches across Virginia, an unexpected arrest fans the ashes of a case long presumed cold. But there is still no body, no grave, only questions, countless questions, flickering like fireflies refusing to go out. His name is Thomas Dillard, 59 now, a retired electrician who had once lived just 3 streets away from the Maitlands. A quiet man, neighbors said. Polite. Helpful. Even. A regular at the church bake sales, the kind who remembered birthdays, who waved from his porch with a half-filled mug of lukewarm coffee and a practiced smile. But on August 11, 2025, at exactly 6:42 a.m., federal agents descended on his modest ranch home like a thunderstorm cracking a long drought sky. Eyewitnesses recall the sudden swarm of unmarked SUVs, the rifles aimed without hesitation, the sink of surprise in Dillard's eyes that seemed rehearsed and yet utterly real. Within minutes, he was in cuffs, sweat dried to his temples, house slippers still on, and the town that thought it had buried its worst demons found out that some ghosts wear familiar faces. What did they find in that house? What secrets had he kept for 29 years? Inside the brick bungalow with the sun-bleached shutters, investigators uncovered what they delicately called a collection of preserved memories, though the word macabre would have done more justice. Boxes sealed with electrical tape, an aging trunk with rusted hinges, undated Polaroids of neighborhood block parties, church gatherings, even a 4th of July parade where young Sophia once twirled in a sparkled red dress, face lit by joy and sparklers. And then came the crimson-stained scrap of fabric, confirmed to be from the pajama set she wore the night she vanished. A Minnie Mouse print. Her mother remembered folding lovingly only hours before the scream that never came. In a hidden compartment beneath the basement stairs, law enforcement found a shoe, just one. A size 2 pink Keds sneaker with a frayed Velcro strap, tucked inside an old cereal box marked Christmas lights. The air in that room turned heavier than time itself, like decades had been waiting to exhale. But evidence alone does not fill the silence left by absence. And questions, once stirred, form whirlpools in the psyche of a town already drowning in decades of guilt and speculation. Had Thomas Dillard been hiding in plain sight all along? Whispers sweeping through Spotsylvania tangled themselves with memory. Had anyone seen Sophia leave that yard? Had Dillard ever spoken to her before that day? And what about the unexplained power outages that summer? The flickering porch lights on Oak Ridge Lane, the neighbor's dog that barked for hours that same night. Ignored because it always barked? Suddenly, trivialities from 1996 warped into potential proofs, and old wounds reopened like paper left out in the rain. But when authorities questioned Dillard, he said little, just one sentence, delivered with the softness of a prayer and the terror of a buried scream. She never stopped singing. And with that, the interrogation room fell into the kind of silence only a guilty man believes can save him. The phrase echoed haunting, lyrical, utterly inexplicable. She never stopped singing. Detectives played it over again, in their heads, in the dim quiet of the precinct, and later for the Maitlands, who clung to it like a thread both cruel and precious. What did he mean? Could it be metaphor, madness, or memory? In the days that followed, forensic teams illuminated hidden layers of Dillard's life. A dusty attic revealed journals full of erratic scrawldoodles of musical notes, childlike sketches, pages obsessively repeating Sophia's name in distorted scribbles. One entry, dated July 1996, was written in a trembling hand. "The light is trapped in her throat. I hear it at night, even when it's quiet. FBI behavioral analysts would later call it an auditory fixation, a symptom of psychosis or guilt, or both. And yet, despite the evidence, the confessions in shadow and ink, and the sorrow weaved into that single chilling sentence, Dillard never said another word. No map, no body, just silence, and a song that may never truly fade. The town, once lulled into complacency by the passage of time, now found itself retracing every shadow. News vans returned like crows to a battlefield, the courthouse steps once again taped off under the blaze of camera lights and whispered rumors. Old classmates of Sophia's emerged from obscurity, their adult faces masking the echoes of playgrounded grief. Teachers, now grayer, remembered the glitter projects she never finished, the seat in the second row left pointedly empty after she disappeared. The red ribbons fluttered back on telephone poles, brittle from the sun and sorrow, as if they too refused to let go. Sophia's mother, Elena, stood in front of reporters with the same dignity she wore in 1996, her voice hoarse but unbroken. "They say his house holds answers," she said quietly, looking toward a horizon only she seemed able to see, "but I still have no place to leave her flowers." Her words hung in the air like unfinished prayers, and for the first time in 29 years, the entire county remembered how it felt to miss a girl they never truly knew and wonder if they ever really looked in the right places. In the days following Dillard's arrest, the FBI set up a mobile forensics lab just beyond the tree line behind his house, close to a creek that meandered like a forgotten lullaby through the underbrush. Cadaver dogs searched every inch of the soil, their barks slicing through the humid August air, while sonar scanned beneath the water's surface. But each lead faded into erosion and sorrow. The soil yielded bones, but none human. A child's locket encrusted in moss was unearthed near an overgrown fire pit, and inside, water-damaged but unmistakable, was a photo of Sophia with her father, swinging high above a blur of green. It was the same photo that once sat beneath a magnet on the Maitland's refrigerator. Time had buried it. Time had almost buried her. And now, law enforcement stood on the very edge of a truth they couldn't yet reach, a truth buried not just in dirt, but in something deeper in memory, in madness, and in the chilling thought that Sophia's voice still lingers somewhere between this world and the one no child should ever have to enter alone. They reopened boxes long archived in municipal darkness files, thick with brittle paper and faded photographs, timelines tangled in white tape and red ink. A retired state investigator named Marlon Reese, once young and dogged, now slow but burning with unfinished fury, returned to the case with hands that shook only when he thought of the swing set in the Maitland's yard. He remembered the rumors from 1996, a rust-colored van seen circling the neighborhood in the weeks before Sophia disappeared, a call routed through the sheriff's office that claimed a girl's laugh echoed in the woods past midnight. Dismissed then as cruel prank or shared hallucination, but now, with Dillard's sudden spotlight, all the half-recorded testimonies came rushing back like specters. A waitress who swore she saw him in Fredericksburg the morning after Sophia vanished, ordering apple pie with 2 forks. A boy, now grown, who remembered lending Dillard a flashlight days before, never returned, though it bore his name in Sharpie. And at the heart of it all was a single damning detail unearthed only now. Dillard had once been the contractor hired to rewire the church's Sunday school wing in June 1996. The same church where Sophia had her recital. The same church from which her final song was said to have floated, ghost-like, into the town's ears the day before she disappeared. If that wall could sing, it would howl. But the wall said nothing. It stood mute, draped in peeling lead paint and shadows, indifferent to the grief echoing off its bricks. Investigators brought in ground-penetrating radar to scan the church grounds, beneath the flower beds, behind the choir loft, near the playground fence where Sophia had once traced stars in the dirt with her shoe. The readings were inconclusive, frustrating. Still, Dillard's connection to the church clung like dust to every memory now. Parents who once trusted him to fix leaky wires now remembered how he lingered near the juice table during vacation Bible school, how he complimented Sophia's voice with a softness that felt harmless then. Elena remembered it too. She remembered the buttoned shirt he wore the night Sophia sang, "You Are My Sunshine." The tear that had rolled down his cheek, the way he clapped too long, eyes too wet. And still, he never stopped smiling. Back then, no one thought to ask why. The deeper they dug into Dillard's past, into the records too long left to gather dust, the more fragments surfaced, each sharp as glass, each one cutting into the illusion of innocence. A former coworker recalled how Dillard once disappeared for 2 days in July of '96, returning sunburned, shaken, and quieter than usual. A gas station attendant in Quantico mentioned a man matching Dillard's description, buying shovels and lime, paid in cash. But dates blurred, memories bent, and without a confession, nothing was definitive. The Maitlands, meanwhile, found themselves trapped in a waking purgatory, suspended between almost and never. Elena took to sitting on the porch alone past midnight, whispering lullabies into the wind as if her daughter might still hear them. The house never changed. The swing still stood, creaking gently in the breeze, as if time hadn't dared touch it. And somewhere, maybe nearby or impossibly far, Sophia's voice might still sing in the dark, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally listen. In late August, a forensic psychologist named Dr. Lillian Reese was brought into the case. She sat across from Thomas Dillard in a gray-walled room where the lights hummed louder than the man himself. Her specialty wasn't extraction, it was interpretation. She studied the unsaid, the twitch of an eye, the way memory folds under pressure. And when she asked Dillard why he had that pajama sleeve, why he had kept Sophia's image entombed in boxes for nearly 30 years, he only blinked slowly and whispered, "So she wouldn't fade." Reese wrote later that his attachment wasn't merely perverse, it was preservation. In his fractured world, the girl remained eternal, mid-laugh, mid-song, untouched by time or consequence. The state would argue it was proof of guilt, of obsession, warped beyond recognition. But Reese, in her private notes, scrawled a line that no prosecutor would ever read aloud. He doesn't believe he took her. He believes he kept her safe from silence. And just like that, the question twisted once more. Was this the final page of Sophia's story, or only another mask placed on a nightmare to make it easier to bear? As summer decayed into the first chill of fall, a judge ruled Thomas Dillard mentally fit to stand trial. Outside the courthouse, where protesters held candles in trembling hands and a choir of Sophia's childhood peers sang the lullaby from her last recital, the air brimmed with ache and anticipation. Yet inside, the proceedings were clinical, sterilized, suffocating in their demand for certainties that remained elusive. Prosecutors laid out every splinter of evidence, every photo, every journal, every echo of a girl who had once been. Defense attorneys painted a portrait of a troubled man, untethered from reality, a mind moth-eaten by delusion rather than malice. But when Elena Maitland took the stand, the room stilled into reverent silence. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She simply unfolded the same pajamas in a clear evidence bag, the ones with Minnie Mouse smiling wide across a faded cotton chest, and whispered, "She wears dreams I can't wake from." Her words didn't argue. They didn't prove. They pierced. And in that moment, the jury didn't need a body. They had a mother's unburied grief. They had a ghost in her eyes. And above all, they had the question that never stopped singing. But justice, like truth, is rarely clean. As the trial stretched into its third week, the evidence grew heavier, but not clearer. The shoe, the locket, the journals ghosted in obsession, all damning, yet still lacking the definitive final weight, the body. Without it, every fact floated just shy of resolution. The defense pressed the absence like a wound. No remains, no crime, they insisted. But for the Maitlands, and for a town paralyzed all these years by the not knowing, Sophia's absence had always been more than physical. It was haunting, cellular, embedded in their daily breath. And so, when jurors finally emerged to read their verdict, the silence that fell was absolute. Time itself held its breath. Behind 7 counts of unlawful imprisonment and first-degree kidnapping, they found Thomas Dillard guilty, not of murder, but of stealing a life and leaving only shadows. Elena closed her eyes as the sentence was read, not in relief, but in recognition. Not all ghosts vanish with verdicts. Some, like Sophia's faint melody in the back of Dillard's mind, never leave. They echo, they wait, they remind, and above the courtroom, unnoticed, a sunbeam caught the glass pane just right, casting a spray of color across the floor like the last breath of a lullaby unanswered, but never forgotten. In the weeks that followed, the town staggered toward healing, with the uncertainty of a body learning to walk again after years buried under grief. Memorials bloomed like wildflowers along familiar roads, soft teddy bears, candles with flickering flames, photographs of a girl forever 8. Psychologists were dispatched to the elementary school, now housed in the building where Sophia once sang, as if the echoes of her voice still lived in the corridor walls. The swing in her backyard was eventually taken down, but not by her family. It snapped one night in the wind, as if it too had finally let go. Elena held onto the broken chain like a relic, and on what would have been Sophia's 37th birthday, she stood alone beneath the maple tree that once shaded her daughter's laughter, whispering, "I still hear you." And maybe, just maybe, that was the truth. Because in a town where silence once swallowed everything, Sophia's song had become the only sound that mattered, one that no jail, no courtroom, no decade of lost time could ever silence completely. And yet, though a verdict was reached and headlines faded, one question continued to burn in the corners of every quiet moment. Where is Sofia Maitland? Without a grave, the ache could not fully calcify into mourning. Without knowing, the town remained suspended in the ache of endless expectation. FBI archives kept the case technically open, flagged in red under presumed homicide, body unrecovered. And every so often, a tip would surface, an anonymous letter, a whispered claim, a dream that felt too precise. None panned out, but the mystery refused to dissolve. Future generations grew up hearing her name in lullabies and warnings. Her face, forever 8, became etched into the mythos of a county where time stood still for one family. And in quiet homes where lights flickered during summer storms, parents would pause for a heartbeat too long, hands on windowsills, listening not for thunder, but for the ghost of a girl who once sang through the dark and left a town forever waiting, forever listening for her final verse. In a sterile evidence locker beneath the haze of flickering fluorescent light, Sophia's belongings remain tagged, catalogued, preserved. A pajama sleeve, a shoe, a photo dulled by time and water. They sit in silence, not just as evidence, but as relics of a life interrupted mid-breath. The town speaks her name now with reverence, like a hymn carried on the wind, unsure where prayer ends and memory begins. Schools host annual vigils beneath playground swings, and candles line chapel pews on the anniversary of her disappearance, their flames trembling like the truth we may never fully grasp. The trial is over. Thomas Dillard remains behind bars, aged by more than years, hunted by a song that never stops. Yet the ache endures not in headlines, not in law books, but in the hollow places that justice fails to reach. Because Sofia Maitland isn't just missing, she is a scar stitched into the soil, a melody trapped in wind, a lullaby still being sung by those who desperately need to believe she might somehow, someday, sing again. In the silence that follows great tragedy, what remains is seldom tidy. Sofia Maitland's name endures not only in the court documents and cold case files, but etched beneath the skin of every mother who ever turned from a stove to find a backyard swing swaying empty. Her story has become a prism through which the town now views every strange shadow, every misplaced noise. Even now, in the crisp darkness of approaching autumn, some say they hear her just faintly in the wind that winds through pinewood and memory, a hum, a high note held impossibly long. Perhaps it is nothing. Or perhaps it is everything. Because some melodies do not end when the singer falls silent. They echo woven into stories told at bedtime, into crayon sketches pinned to school hallway walls, into the heartbeats of lives unwilling to forget. The search for her may one day fade. The pain may dull, but her song never stops. And maybe that, in the end, is how she finally finds her way home. And so, the town carries on, not with closure, but with a kind of tender defiance. Sofia Maitland's story is no longer confined to the unsolved, the tragic, or the mysterious. It has transformed into a living memory, braided into the fabric of family rituals and quiet moments. Her name is whispered in bedtime prayers and carved discreetly into the underside of school desks. Children who never knew her now gather every June to lay petals beside a sculpted bronze swing in the town square, their hands small and sincere. Each passing year does not erase her absence, it renews it, reshapes it into something softer but no less fierce. For though her body was never found, though the truth still hides in the silence between breaths, Sophia remains, in voice, in shadow, in the weight of a lullaby once interrupted, and perhaps in that haunting, echoing song heard only by those who still believe. She is not lost at all but waiting, always waiting to be truly found. She was only 8 years old, yet Sofia Maitland now walks the echoing corridors of American tragedy alongside names etched in sorrow. She is not merely a file in an FBI archive or a faded photograph on a missing child poster. She is a presence that defies the passage of time, her laughter suspended in amber, her voice flowing like a current beneath everyday life in Spotsylvania. In every candle lit, every broken swing left untouched, there breathes a quiet resistance to forgetting. The case may one day slide into the deep recesses of history, and those closest to it may age beyond recognition, but the story endures, not because it ended cleanly, not because justice was absolute, but because some stories refuse to dim, no matter how long the night. And Sophia's is one of them, filled with silence and song, with hope and horror, with echoes that never quite resolve. Somewhere, in the hush, after a storm or in a gust that bends a tree just so, her song plays on. Not over. Not forgotten. Simply continuing. It is said that grief moves in circles, but some never close. In Spotsylvania, life resumes, but always with one eye on the past. The grocery aisles and church pews, the school halls and quiet kitchens, all carry her absence like a hush after a final note, the kind you strain to hear again, even when you know it's gone. And in that hush lies the truth. Sofia Maitland was more than a child. She became the symbol of what haunts and what heals, the embodiment of a question without an answer. Her melody, incomplete, winds through generations, teaching them not only to mourn but to listen. And perhaps one day, long after headlines have faded and memories have frayed, someone, an old woman or a child not yet born, will hear that final verse whispered on the wind. Until then, her echo remains, unfinished but eternal, looping like a lullaby under breath, waiting ever so patiently to be heard. Years may stretch like roads into the unknown, but Sophia's name still anchors hearts to the past, in archives and attics, in whispered rituals and annual gatherings, in the eyes of mothers who hold their children just a second longer at twilight. She lives on. Her story is not over, not really, because in every unsolved case that follows, hers flickers underneath like a pilot light, steady and unresolved. In every child whose face becomes a headline, in every family who stares into shadow hoping for a glimmer, there echoes Sophia's melody, tangled in grief, but woven with resilience. Perhaps this is the most human truth of all, that even without closure, we find ways to remember. We build meaning in the silence. We conjure her song in solitude. And in doing so, Sofia Maitland is not lost in the spaces between. She is alive there, in the question, in the ache, in the breath held by a world still listening for her final, unfinished note. In the decades to come, Sofia Maitland may never be found, but she will never truly disappear. Her story is now part of the collective marrow of a community, of a nation haunted by questions without answers. Her absence has become presence, a kind of sacred vacancy that guides hands to light candles, hearts to cradle grief with tenderness, voices to rise in prayer and resistance. She is the soft footfall in hallways long emptied, the flash of red in a crowd that makes a mother look twice, the lullaby remembered at the edge of sleep. We map our fears and our hopes onto children like her, because her case reminds us that time does not heal what truth has not cured, and so the world waits, still listening, still believing, still searching not only for Sophia but for what it means to face the dark with open eyes and a heart still willing to hear the faintest song, even when it trembles just out of reach. In the quiet decades that trail the wake of tragedy, it isn't the headlines that hold the weight, it is the forgotten gestures, the untied shoelaces, the songs half sung and never finished. Sofia Maitland left behind no grave, no epitaph etched in stone, yet her presence persists in the liminal spaces between truth and myth. The courtroom is silent now, the playground empty, but in houses lit by the soft hum of porch lights, parents still check twice before bedtime, still freeze for a heartbeat when the wind carries a sound too sweet to dismiss. Sophia walks with them not as a memory sealed away, but as something far more alive, a promise. That innocence lost must never be silence accepted, that not every vanished child fades into dusk, and that one day, whether in this life or in story or song, her voice will rise again not as a whisper, but as a chorus carried by a world that refused to forget. Because in the end, Sofia Maitland is not just a name written into court transcripts or whispered through courtroom hallways. She is a hymn against forgetting, an ache transmuted into remembrance. Her story lingers not because it ended in resolution, but because it never truly ended at all. She belongs to the countless unresolved chords that the world carries like unseen wounds, soft, persistent, unbearable at times, but also, somehow, necessary. Necessary to remind us of the fragility between presence and absence, innocence and harm, darkness and light. And so, as lights dim in houses nestled between old oaks and winding streets, as lullabies once sung aloud are now hummed with reverence, the world continues to bear witness, not just to what was lost, but to what refuses to be erased. Sophia's song plays on in breath, in wind, in the steady thrum of hearts that have chosen, and will always choose, to remember. And perhaps this is the legacy Sofia Maitland leaves behind, not of resolution but reverence. In the fractured mirror of justice, where no answer can fully bind the wound, she becomes more than the girl who vanished. She becomes the litmus by which we measure humanity's capacity to remember what it cannot fix. Her vanished footsteps press on soil now sacred, her voice sown into wind, and weeping, and wonder. Sophia lives in the waiting silence before a child answers when called, in the flicker of porch lights at dusk, in the breath caught between fear and faith. Not every mystery dies with time. Some, like hers, evolve into memory, into myth, into songs sung by those who refuse to let her fall silent. And perhaps that is the grace we give her in her absence. Not forgetting, not surrendering, but holding space for her story to breathe, forever unfinished, forever sacred, forever singing. And so the years continue, hushed but steady, guided by a melody only the soul can decipher. The storm that once shattered the quiet in Spotsylvania has long since passed, leaving behind not wreckage but reverence. What began with a vanished girl beneath a pink-skied dusk has become a symbol etched deeper than evidence, more enduring than justice. Sophia's story, fragmented, unanswered, indelible, now lives in the margins of time itself, where grief darkens into devotion and silence grows thick with memory. There will always be stories like hers, lives stolen into the stillness, names whispered into the abyss. Yet Sofia Maitland reminds us not of the cruelty of forgetting, but the power of remembering. And so long as the wind moves through backyard swings, and lullabies persist between dusk and dream, so long as even one heart listens for her note in the quiet, Sophia is not gone. She is becoming infinite, echoing, a sacred hush that still sings. In that sacred hush, where the sky tilts violet just before the stars begin their slow reveal, Sophia Maitland endures not as a mystery to be solved, but as a legacy to be cherished. Hers is the story rewritten not with full stops, but ellipses, a breathing space left open for the ache to speak. Children now grow up knowing her name like a hymn carved into the foundation of their town, not from fear, but reverence, because in remembering Sophia, they remember every child who vanished without answer, every soul waiting on the edge of dusk for someone to still care. Her final verse may never be found, yet in that silence there is music. In the questions that echo long after the court cases are closed and the lights are turned off, her song is what remains, unfinished, eternal, a quiet stanza woven through the fabric of time, reminding us that some stories were never meant to fade, only to be heard again and again and again. And in the final analysis, in courtrooms emptied, in porches swept clean, in memories softening with age, what remains is not the horror, but the humanity. Sophia Maitland's name has crossed the boundary from tragedy into myth, from evidence to elegy. Hers is not merely a story about what was taken, but about what endures in spite of it. A town learns to love the vanished, not with finality, but with fidelity. A mother learns to grieve not with closure, but with clarity. And a world still listens because to listen is to promise that silence won't win. Sophia's voice may never rise again in song, may never echo in the halls where she once laughed, but her presence has transcended loss. She lives on in the candle's glow, in the hush before the bell rings, in the hearts that keep asking the most sacred question, where is she? And the answer, impossibly delicate and profoundly true, is this: she is here, not in body but in reverence, in memory, in music. She is the note we still hold, trembling, waiting, promising never to let go. So the story of Sophia Maitland concludes not with answers, but with echoes lingering in church rafters, in the rustle of maple leaves over an empty yard, in the hearts of all who remember without resolution. Justice may have worn its robe, and the gavel may have fallen, yet her tale resists such clean demarcations. It lives in fragments the way twilight light filters through old swing chains, the way some tunes refuse to leave the ear. For every name still waiting to be spoken aloud, for every child never found, Sophia stands as both wound and balm, a sorrow and a summons. And though her body lies unfound, her presence is undeniable, a guiding note in the unfinished symphony of the missing. As long as stories are told around firelight, as long as silence presses just before a child's song, Sophia Maitland will remain, not only as a girl taken too soon, but as the song that reminds us all why we must never stop listening. And so, with each retelling, Sophia Maitland is sung back into the world, not as a headline or a case number, but as a sacred refrain that walks beside grief and never lets memory fade into silence. Generations will pass, and still her story will echo in lullabies and prayers, in murals painted by hands she never touched, in quiet moments when a mother watches the horizon and waits, not for closure, but for presence, not for explanation, but for connection. Sophia's life, brief as breath and immense as absence, now threads through time like a hymn that knows no end. In this, perhaps, is the most enduring grace, that even without an answer, her story pulses alive in every wind, swept silence, in every note that trembles but never falls. She is not just what we lost. She is everything we promised to remember. And as long as there is breath, as long as there is story, as long as there is a single heart still listening in the dark, Sophia Maitland will sing. And in that final, tender refrain spoken not in courtrooms or newsrooms, but in the hush shared between memory and meaning, Sophia Maitland becomes something greater than the sum of her loss. She is a thread wound through the conscience of a town, the reason porch lights still flicker long into the night, the hope tucked inside each renewed search and every paused breath. Her fate may remain cloaked in the mystery of silence, her body never cradled in earth or stone, but her story defies absence. It rises, again and again, through voices who dare to remember, who dare to believe that love has the power to outlast even unanswered questions. Sophia is not defined by what was taken, but by what she continues to give a song the world leans closer to hear, even now, even still. And when the night is silent and the wind stirs soft through the branches, her melody returns not as sorrow, but as light, a light that does not fade, a song that never ends. Somewhere in the archives of the human heart, Sofia Maitland's name is etched beneath the word forever. Though the papers may yellow and the headlines quiet, her legacy pulses in every beat of injustice remembered, every mystery that refuses to close. She reminds us that not all disappearances are erasures. Some, like hers, become beacons not because we found the answer, but because we refuse to look away. In the final reckoning of time and tenderness, Sophia is no longer just a girl who vanished in the summer dusk. She is the unfinished verse we hold close, the song paused mid-note, asking us not to solve, but to bear witness. And in doing so, we promise her this: that as long as the wind carries whispers, as long as stories cradle the lost, as long as silence waits to be broken by love, we will listen. Still, always, we will listen. And so we listen not out of duty, but devotion. For in Sofia Maitland's story, we find the echo of every child lost too soon, every truth left stranded in shadow. Time may pass, growing heavy with silence, thick with what-ifs. But her memory lightens that burden with purpose. Her story does not demand a conclusion. It asks only to be held. In the sanctity of remembrance, where lullabies thread through open windows and porch lights burn like votives against the dark, Sophia becomes the heartbeat of those unwilling to forget. She is not gone, not fully, not while whisper and song remain, and perhaps this is how hope survives, not in answers, but in echoes. Not in closure, but in the courage to keep listening, to hold tight to the melody that grief tried to quiet. Because even in her silence, Sophia sings. Even unseen, she endures. Not as a mystery, but as a promise. Eternal, echoing, beloved forever and never alone. Beneath the dust-colored sky of August's End, a mural now stretches across the brick facade of Spotsylvania's old community center. Painted with aching precision, it depicts a girl mid-swing, dress caught in a gust, mouth wide in song, but eyes turned towards something unseen beyond the canvas. Below it, in gold script, shaped like the trailing ends of music notes, reads only, "Still singing." No plaque explains it. None is needed. People gather here in silence, teenagers with earbuds removed, mothers with strollers paused, elderly men who blink too fast when the breeze shifts. They do not come for explanations. They come for remembrance, for reminder, for reverence. And as the sun dips below the tree line, casting long shadows across pavement once watched by searchlights, a distant wind moves through the leaves like breath, and just for a heartbeat tender, aching, eternal, those gathered can almost hear her, not in absence, but in presence, not in pain, but in promise, in the music that never stopped. In the soft quiet that follows remembrance, Sofia Maitland becomes not a question to solve, but a heartbeat to honor. Her mural stands not as monument, but as mirror reflecting back the ache, the resilience, the love that breathes through absence. Spotsylvania, changed forever, continues to move forward without moving on. The missing posters have faded, but her name is now sewn into the town's very soil. A locket found, a swing lost, a voice remembered. These fragments form not a conclusion, but a sacred rhythm, pulsing on in those willing to listen. And maybe that is enough. Not answers, but echoes. Not closure, but connection. For in every dusk that softens into night, in every whisper of wind that stirs the maple trees she once played beneath, Sophia's song rises. Not gone. Not final. Just there, still singing, still waiting, still ours. The music doesn't end. It transforms. Into memory, into meaning, and into a gentle vow we take with every breath to never let her fade. So perhaps there is no need to ask anymore where Sofia Maitland is, for the answer lies not in a map or a verdict, but in the spaces she left behind, made luminous by remembrance, and moved gently, endlessly, by love. Her face is not just a faded photograph, but a constellation in the collective heart of a community that refused to forget, that insisted sorrow be shaped into song. Time may never deliver answers, and justice may fall short of healing, but Sophia's legacy has transcended both. She is the breath held just before a lullaby begins. The golden hour that clings to swing sets long after children have gone inside. The hush that calls forth memory over and over again. In her absence, she gave presence. In her silence, she taught a town to listen. And so, Sofia Maitland remains not just as a girl once lost, but as the music we keep choosing to hear, with every candle lit, every story told, every heart still singing. And perhaps, in the quiet closing of this chapter, we come to understand that some stories, like Sofia Maitland's, do not need endings to leave their mark. Hers is not bound by time or verdict, by where she is or what happened, but by how deeply she is felt. Like a melody that lingers long after the final note, her essence lives on in the hushed spaces where grief shakes hands with grace, across playgrounds and pews, in lullabies whispered beneath breath, in the flicker of candlelight across tear-wet cheeks. Sophia's presence speaks with a voice neither lost nor silenced, but transformed. She teaches us that remembrance is an act of love, that the refusal to forget is itself a kind of justice. And so, wherever hearts beat with empathy and a porch light glows quietly against the night, she remains, softer than shadow, brighter than despair, not missing, not gone, just still singing. And in this final breath-held moment, between the telling and the silence that follows, Sofia Maitland is no longer just the girl who vanished one summer evening beneath cotton candy skies. She is our collective reckoning, our shared pause, our vow etched in memory. She exists in the spaces stories leave behind, unfinished, radiant, aching, and that is where she is found, again and again, found in the trembling voice of a mother remembering a laugh that once echoed down a hallway, found in the pause of a teacher crossing out an unused name on a school roster, found in the lull in conversation when the wind moves a wind chime with a sound too eerily familiar. Sophia, beloved and unforgotten, is the song that changed its key but never lost its tune. Her story does not resolve, it resounds. And so we return to the swing set, to the porch light, to the mural in the soft red dusk, and we listen. Not for an ending, but for the echo that tells us she is still here, still singing. And as evening settles once more across Spotsylvania, painting the sky in hues that echo that long-ago dusk, a gentle hush lingers not empty, but alive with memory. In the hush, Sofia Maitland becomes more than history. She becomes invocation, reminder, ritual. Her name is a thread carried through time, a song never broken, a sacred vow against forgetting. Lights still flicker on porches, voices still soften at her mention, and somewhere, under the sweep of stars, a swing sways slowly in the dark, pushed not by wind, but by all the hearts that still believe. Not in closure, not in justice complete, but in presence, the quiet kind, the enduring kind. And so, for one last time, the town leans in close, breath caught in reverence, and listens. Because Sofia Maitland never vanished into silence. She became the silence that sings. Tonight, the wind carries her name again. Not loud, not shouted, but threaded into the sighing trees, into porch step prayers and quiet dreams that open with her smile. In Spotsylvania and beyond, her story turns into solace, her absence shaped into song. The world may never retrieve every truth about what happened that warm, pink-skied evening in 1996, but it clings to what Sofia Maitland gave despite it. A haunting, a grace, a promise. As the night deepens and candles flicker low, as the mural glows faintly under street lamp shimmer, nothing more needs to be said. The swing is still. The stars blink gently behind leaves curling toward autumn, and in that final stillness, soft, aching, complete, we understand. Sofia Maitland was never truly lost. She is here, in the hush and the hope, in the light and the listening. Not just remembered, still singing. So we close this story not with a full stop, but with a breath held sacred, because in every breath taken by those who remember, Sofia Maitland keeps living. She lives in the lullaby hummed by a stranger who never knew her name, in the soft tremor of a candle lit without reason on an ordinary porch. She lives in the mural's painted swing, in the whispered still singing, passed from one child to another as legend, as truth, as love. Her song was interrupted, yes, but never ended. And so long as we keep listening, gently, fiercely, faithfully listening, Sophia remains. Not as a case, not as a tragedy, but as light within the silence, a song without end, a promise kept. And so the final note softens, not into silence, but into something even more enduring, a resonance held gently in the hearts of all who carry Sofia Maitland forward. Her story, unraveled across years and aching pauses, does not fade into the background of unresolved history. It becomes breath, woven into the songs sung to sleeping children, and the quiet tears of mothers who double-check locked doors at dusk. There is no epilogue to a melody still echoing, no need for one. Because sometimes the most sacred stories end not with answers, but with remembrance. Sophia lives in the listening, in that sacred murmured promise beneath every porch light left burning, every mural stroke, every lullaby trembling between hope and heartbreak. She endures because love endures. And in that, Sofia Maitland becomes not just a story told, but a voice remembered, a presence kept, a hymn, suspended forever in the hush between what was and what we still hope might be.